Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, good afternoon, Tej Chauhan. Good afternoon, Nidhi Sharma. Good afternoon, Ms. Soumya. Yes. So we were discussing on the chapter of registration. We understood the basics of registration. We understood the limits, right? We understood clearly how important registration is. And if we don't take the registration on time, what do we lose? Majorly, we lose the input tax credit. So registration on a timely basis is important, correct? And then we proceeded further to understand the nitty-gritties, who is a taxable person, what is the excuse me, what is a taxable person, what is the annual turnover which we have to consider, and then the states and the limits. So we saw that for four states, TNMM states, the limit is 10 lakhs. For the other six states, UP must, there is limit of 20 lakhs. And for all the other states and union territories, other than these 4 plus 6, 10 states, the limit is 20 lakhs for services and 40 lakhs for goods. Right? Now, proceeding further from where we had left, we will now discuss on the other aspects, which is what will be a turnover for a job worker. Now, who's a job worker? Job worker means a person. Let's understand this job worker first. That who is a job worker? Job worker is a person who does the job work. What does it mean by job work? The person who takes the goods from a manufacturer, does some activities on it. He is called as a job worker. Now, what is the relevance of this job worker in GST? There is definitely relevance of this in GST because a person who is manufacturing, he will sell or give his goods. He will not sell his goods. He will not supply also because what he's giving, he's only giving his goods to another person. He will take the goods, do some activity on it, and send the goods to the manufacturer. Okay, like I'm a manufacturer of steel utensils. I will get the raw steel. I will do the molding of it. Now I have to polish it, right? Because if I don't polish, the look and feel of the utensil will not get. So for this polishing, what I will do, I will give this to a job worker who is, I will give the utensils, what is actually completely manufactured, but it cannot be used. I will give this to send it to the premises of a job worker. Now, what this job worker will do, he will take the goods from me, what I've delivered to him. He will do the polishing and he will give back the goods to me. Okay. So is this activity, is this a sale activity or is it a supply activity? It is a supply. Okay. So if you all are anonymously saying that it's a supply. So if it's a supply, we know that supply are of eight forms. So which form of supply is it amongst that eight forms? Is it sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental or lease or disposal? Because if you are saying supply, it has to be one of those eight forms of supply. So which form of supply it is? So what does your silence means? That it is not a supply, correct? Because supply can be only of these 8 forms. Apart from this, there cannot be a supply. So it is not coming under this category of 8 forms of supply. So when I'm giving goods to a job worker, it is not a supply. If it would have been supply, I will charge GST to the job worker and he will pay me GST. But is he buying the goods from me? No, he is doing his job working on that goods. He will do that activity and give back the goods to me, for which he will charge the job working charges. He will charge certain charges, which is called as job work charges. Okay. Now that job work charges is a supply because it is one form of service. Okay. So he is doing a service element of polishing those goods and giving back to me. So when I send the goods to him, it is not a supply. When he gives back the goods to me, then also it is not a supply. So it's a special activity wherein goods are being moved. Movement of goods तो हो रहा है, लेकिन supply नहीं हो रही. ठीक है? So there are these special types of transactions where there is movement of goods, but there is no supply in it. तो इस केस में भी क्या हो रहा है? मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड्स हो रहा है, लेकिन सप्लाई नहीं हो रही है. तो मैं जो मेरे गुड्स जॉब वर्कर को भेजता हूं और वो पॉलिश करके या कुछ भी एक्टिविटी करके दोबारा मुझे भेज रहे, बोथ ऑफ दीज मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड्स इज नॉट अ सप्लाई. इसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं लगेगा. And the job worker, for his job work activity, he will charge me that he is providing service. So that is a form of supply on that GST is payable. Okay. So with that background, are you clear now? How does the job work work? So in case of a job worker, the following supplies will not be, or the following transactions will not be included as the turnover of either the supplier nor the job worker. What the goods, what I'm sending it to him is definitely not a supply, and goods what the job worker is returning back to me, that is not his supply. Goods sent from one job worker to another job worker. I have sent the goods to one job worker. From that job worker's premises, it is going to another job worker's premises. That is also not his supply. And from the job worker's premises, the third, when the goods are directly supplied from the premises of the job worker. Okay. So when I send the goods, take the example of steel utensils, everything I have done it. I have got the raw steel. I have put it in a furnace and made it in the shape of a utensil. Now I've given it for polishing. They have two options, that job worker will do the polishing and give it back to me. I will sell it. Or I will tell, okay, since that is the last activity, you do the polishing and you can sell it or you can send it to the customer's location. That is sale on my behalf, what is doing. He is not selling it. So that is also not his turnover. It is my turnover. So in calculation of the value of turnover, these three things, goods returned by the job worker to the principal, goods returned by the job worker to the principal, goods sent from one job worker to another, goods directly supplied from the place of the job worker to the principal, to the customer of the principal also will not be included in the job worker's turnover. So what will be the turnover of job worker? Only his job working charges will be his turnover and nothing else. Clear? And if job worker aspect is clear, then we'll go to the next aspect. Is it clear now? Any doubts on job work? Because job worker बहुत छोटा टॉपिक है, लेकिन इसमें आपको टर्नओवर में ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. So we understood job work. अभी चलते हैं next aspect पे, which is on where should you register? Should you register from the place where you are supplying your goods or to the place where you are supplying the good? You have to register from the place. Registration is required only for a place of business from where taxable supply takes place. So from where you are supplying, that is important and not to. अगर आपका कस्टमर है वेरियस स्टेट्स में, जम्मू में एक कस्टमर है, एक कस्टमर है यहाँ पे गुजरात में, और एक कस्टमर है आसाम में, तो आप अगर रजिस्टर्ड हो फ्रॉम वेयर यू आर सप्लाइंग, आप रजिस्टर्ड हो बॉम्बे में, मुंबई में आप रजिस्टर्ड हो, सो या आपका बिजनेस मुंबई में है, आप मुंबई से सप्लाई कर रहे हो, सो फ्रॉम वेयर यू आर सप्लाइंग, दैट इज द प्लेस from where you will have to take registration and not the place of your customers. You do not have to take registration at the places or to the places where you are making taxable supply. You have to take registration only from the place. Okay, if you are registered in Mumbai, you are supplying from Mumbai, you have to take registration in Mumbai. ठीक है? Then further, registration is required to be obtained only in the state or states where the supplier has a fixed establishment. Now, what does this mean? I have taken registration in one place and I am sending some people to do audit at the client's location, and the client is located outside the state. So should I take registration in that state or no? Should I take registration of the auditee's place also? Because audit लंबा चला है, suppose समझ लीजिए audit चल गया है 3 महीने के लिए. So should I take registration in that place also? No. Correct? Because it is not a permanent or a fixed establishment. It is a establishment of that person. From the supplier's perspective, he is only using his place to make the transaction or provide the transaction, but it is not where he will do any activity. So a registration is required only in the state or the place where the supplier has a fixed establishment. If it is a temporary establishment, then registration for that place is not required. If a person has only liaison office or marketing office, now what is a liaison office or marketing office? They are these offices where you are doing only licensing work or marketing work, and there is no active supply of goods happening. Then also there is no taxable supply happening from that place. So he is not required to obtain registration. So one is you should be having a fixed establishment and you should be doing any taxable supply. If you are not having fixed establishment, and if you are not having a fixed establishment but not doing a taxable activity, still you do not have to take registration from that place. Okay. लाइसेंस ऑफिस का मतलब हिंदी में होता है कि जहां पे आप सिर्फ कस्टमर से कोऑर्डिनेशन कर रहे हो, आप सप्लाई कुछ नहीं कर रहे हो, लाइसनिंग कर रहे हो, जैसे उनका कुछ क्वेरीज है उसको रिजॉल्व करना है, उनको कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन देना है. ओके, आप वहां से कुछ सप्लाई नहीं करते हो, तो वहां पर आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. उसे कहते हैं लाइसेंस ऑफिस. लाइक सर्विस सेंटर, करेक्ट, उसे आप सर्विस सर्विस सेंटर में तो सप्लाई करते हो, क्योंकि सम सर्विस सेंटर अगर आपके पार्ट्स चेंज करने हैं तो उसके चार्जेस लेते हैं. सो सर्विस सेंटर यू कैन नॉट से एज लाइसेंस ऑफिस. आप ऐसे बोल सकते हो कि एयरटेल सर्विस सेंटर, जहां पे आपको कुछ सप्लाई नहीं होगा, जो भी सप्लाई होगा सेंट्रलाइज होगा, बस आपके क्वेरीज रिजॉल्व करने हैं, उसे आप कहते हो कि लाइसनिंग ऑफिस. For instance, Mr. X is having register office in Delhi. He import goods which are landed in Mumbai seaport. So Mr. X enters into a sale agreement with Mr. Y, who is located in Mumbai. X कहाँ पे registered है? दिल्ली में. और import कहाँ पे हो रहा है? मुंबई में. और मुंबई में उसको कस्टमर मिल गए, तो क्या उसे मुंबई में रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत है? नहीं. Mr. X is not required to obtain registration in Mumbai as he has no fixed establishment in Mumbai. मुंबई पे इंपोर्ट हो रहे हैं और मुंबई से सेल हो रहे हैं, फिर भी उसको मुंबई में रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. ही विल ओनली हैव टू टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन इन दिल्ली. प्रियांशी, टिकट बुकिंग ऑफिसेस इज द प्लेस वेयर द supply actually happens. right? So we cannot consider ticket booking officers or license office. License office is a concept which you'll have to see from a larger perspective. Suppose there is a company which wants to stand, which is a global company, and they want to have presence in India, right? So they will not do the sales stuff at the first itself. They will see how the market is, and for that they will set up liaison offices. In our company law, we will read this in detail, but I will explain you so that we can understand. Wherein licensing offices say, we know this Decathlon brand. Before Decathlon started in India, they did not have their stores. They had license offices so that if anybody wants to know about their products or they want to develop the customer base, so they had these licensing offices wherein if any customer, they used to promote the product in saying that this is what we are doing, and if you want to buy the product, you can buy it directly from our France branch. So directly France used to sell it to the customers in India. So these licensing offices, this license offices only do the licensing and used to inform the products, inform the customers about the products what the French company is selling. Okay, so that was what was called as licensing offices. Sir, warehouse cannot be considered as a fixed establishment. Warehouse can be considered as a fixed establishment because, as we had read the definition of fixed establishment, of establishment which has a permanent degree, there is some permanence in terms of manpower and resources. In case of warehouse, there is some person who is dealing with the goods. There is a goods which is being handled, and there are people who are doing it. So that's way a warehouse is a fixed establishment. Okay. In this scenario, yes, Dhanush, in this scenario, supplier is located in Delhi and place of supply is in Mumbai. So they will charge IGST. They will cannot charge CGST, SGST. They have to charge IGST in this scenario. ठीक है? Further, a threshold limit of a person having place of business in more than one state in India gets reduced to 10 lakhs only when such person makes a taxable supply from any of the special category states. This we understood, right? So we have a place in this special category state, okay, say in Tripura, and you have another office in Karnataka. So what will be the limit for registration in Karnataka then? 10 lakhs is for TNMM. Because of this limit of having a office in a special category state, the limit will not be 20 lakhs for services and 40 lakhs for goods. It will get reduced to 10 lakhs in that other state also. Okay, we'll understand this with an example. Uday Enterprises is engaged in supply of taxable goods in Maharashtra. It also supplies alcoholic liquor for human consumption from Nagaland. Its turnover in the current financial year is 34 lakhs in Maharashtra and 11 lakhs in Nagaland. Okay. What is the limit generally for Maharashtra? It is 40 lakhs. Correct. And for Nagaland, it is a special category state. So there the limit is 11 lakhs. So since Uday Enterprises is exclusively engaged in making taxable supply of goods in Maharashtra, the applicable threshold limit for obtaining registration is 40 lakhs. But however, the threshold should ideally get reduced. But in this case, it will not get reduced to 10 lakhs as supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption are non-taxable supplies. So had they made in Nagaland, they're making all supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So you will not reduce it. So that is the reason in the given case, since the aggregate turnover of Uday Enterprises exceeds the maximum applicable limit of 40 lakhs, because we have to see the aggregate limit 34 plus 11 is 45 lakhs. So the limit is crossing. So it will obtain registration in Maharashtra, but it is not required to obtain registration in Nagaland as he is not making taxable supply from that state. Okay. So understand the difference. Had he supplied any taxable goods from Nagaland, then he will be liable for registration both in Nagaland and Maharashtra. But in this case, he is making a non-taxable supply from Nagaland. So supply has to be made only in Maharashtra and registration has to be obtained only in Maharashtra. Clear? So registration is a little theoretical, but if you are with me with the examples, you will understand it very clearly. करेक्ट नॉन टैक्सेबल सप्लाईज टर्नओवर में इंक्लूडेड है तो इसीलिए एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर में इंक्लूड होगा बट फ्रॉम अ प्लेस वेर यू आर मेकिंग नॉन टैक्सेबल सप्लाई वहां पे रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है दैट इज व्हाट वी सॉ नो कि सेक्शन 23 सेइंग दैट कि कहाँ कहाँ पे आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है दैट वे फ्रॉम फ्रॉम अ प्लेस वेर यू आर मेकिंग अ नॉट टैक्सेबल सप्लाईज एंड अल्कोहलिक लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन इज नॉट अ टैक्सेबल सप्लाई हमने सप्लाई में ही देख लिया कि 5 पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स और अल्कोहलिक लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन पे जीएसटी नहीं है सो इफ यू आर मेकिंग अ नॉन टैक्सेबल सप्लाई वहां पे आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन जरूरी नहीं है सो नागालैंड में रजिस्ट्रेशन की जरूरत नहीं है For aggregate, we will consider non-taxable also. Yes, for the aggregate, you will consider everything. But for registration in that place, if you are doing only non-taxable supplies, तो फिर आपको registration की जरूरत नहीं है. Now, what happens in case of registration for transfer of business? So, in case of a death of a proprietor, when will be treated as transfer of business? The date of transfer or the date of succession, you will be treated as the date of transfer. And in case of any amalgamation or merger, now, once a person dies, then somebody has to do the business. What will be the date that in case of a death of a proprietor, the date of succession will be treated as the date of transfer. From then, you have to take registration. And in case of amalgamation or in case of any demerger, the date from which the ROC issues the certificate of incorporation shall be treated as the date because what happens in case of an amalgamation or demerger, you apply for the petition, you file a request letter or application to the NCLT. Okay. NCLT means a National Company Law Tribunal, which is the authority to grant the approval for amalgamation. So you will apply, NCLT will call for a lot of procedures and things. So your approval will not happen instantly. So it may take a year or two, but the ROC will give a new registration for the amalgamated entity. A and B are getting amalgamated. A new certificate of incorporation will be given by the ROC. So till then, what happens? Will the transaction be liable for GST or no? It will definitely be liable for GST from the date the previous entities, the old entities only will pay the GST. The new entity will be liable from the date when the new registration certificate is coming. That is why they're saying the date from which the ROC issues the certificate of incorporation will be considered the date of transfer and not date of the court order. Because the court order will be something and ROC approval will come very late. So that's why the our GST department is aware of it. So they've said when the ROC issues the certificate, from then you obtain the new registration. Demerger matlab, if you have a entity which is doing say more than one activity and one business vertical you are hiving it off, you are demerging it, उसको आप अलग से निकाल रहे हो, that is called as demerger. So we need to see 40 lakh threshold limit. Yes, we have to see the 40 lakh threshold limit, Somya, for that case. Now, compulsory registration, which means कि अगर आपका लिमिट 40 lakhs या आपका लिमिट 20 lakhs या 10 lakhs भी टच नहीं हुआ, still you have to take registration. This is very important. Section 24 says that you have to obtain compulsory registration even if you are not reached the threshold limit. So what are those cases? First is when any person is making interstate taxable supply. ओके, सेक्शन 24 सेज दैट एनी पर्सन, अगर आप इंट्रा स्टेट सप्लाई कर रहे हो तो फिर वो लिमिट अप्लीकेबल है। बट इफ यू आर मेकिंग एनी इंटर स्टेट टैक्सेबल सप्लाई, तो 1 रुपए से आपको जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा। बट देर इज अ एक्सेप्शन। द एक्सेप्शन इज इफ यू आर मेकिंग टैक्सेबल सर्विसेज। अगर आप टैक्सेबल सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड कर रहे हो एंड इफ यू आर डूइंग एनी इंटरस्टेट, still you will get the threshold limit of that 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs. But if you're doing any interstate taxable supply of goods, then that limit will not apply. If you're doing services, then you're, if that's an exception carved out, saying that if you're making taxable supply of services, so fair, it is fine. But if you're making taxable supply of goods, then that limit will not apply. तो फिर 1 रुपए का, suppose I've done just 1 lakh rupees interstate sales, should I take registration compulsorily or no? First exception is Dhanush. Yes. So Ms. P is saying that yes, if it is goods, for that 1 lakh supply also we have to obtain the registration. And Dhanush is asking what is this first exception? That first exception is for if you're making any interstate taxable supply of services, then you do not have to take compulsory registration. There is a leeway there, which is being provided that if you are providing taxable supply of services, then you do not have to compulsorily take the registration. You have to take registration only when you touch the threshold limit of 10 lakhs, and for TNMM states, for other states, 20 lakhs. This exception is applicable for all states. Yes, it is applicable for all states. Tej Prakash, in your, you have a doubt in the previous slide. Just 1 minute. सो इन केस, कब अगर डेथ हो गई तो व्हेन शुड यू टेक द न्यू रजिस्ट्रेशन, वो बोलना चाहता है ये क्लॉज। ये क्लॉज बोलता है कि अगर प्रोप्राइटर की डेथ हो गई है तो फिर जब से उसका भागीदार या उसका जो लीगल हेयर है, वो जब से बिजनेस शुरू करेगा, या फिर द डेट ऑफ ट्रांसफर, डेट ऑफ सक्सेशन जब है, जनरली डेथ के केस में अगले दिन से ही यू आर गेटिंग अ सक्सेशन। सो हिंदू सक्सेशन एक्ट के हिसाब से दैट वंस अ प्रोप्राइटर डाइज, हिज लीगल हेयर takes over the business. So from that date, he has to take the registration. And in case of any amalgamation, जो amalgamation जो demerger होते हैं, तब नया registration जब से मिलता है, वो कितना भी टाइम ले सकता है, 1 साल भी ले सकता है या 6 महीने भी हो सकते हैं। जब से नया रजिस्ट्रेशन आपको मिलता है उस नए एंटिटी का, तब से आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत है। ठीक है। पुराना कंटिन्यू नहीं हो सकता, नहीं, पुराना कंटिन्यू नहीं हो सकता, बिकॉज इन केस ऑफ अ प्रोप्राइटर, वो तो मर गया है। नाउ द प्रोप्राइटर हैज डाइड, तो फिर उसका रजिस्ट्रेशन आप कंटिन्यू नहीं कर सकते हो। एंड और सेकेंड केस, जब मर्जर, अमालगमेशन, डीमर्जर वगैरह होते हैं, तब पुरानी एंटिटी बंद हो जाती है, तो इसीलिए आप वो रजिस्ट्रेशन कंटिन्यू नहीं कर सकते हो। एक आपको याद रखना है कि जो भी जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन है, इट इज पैन बेस्ड। तो जब भी पैन चेंज होगा, तब आपको नया रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना ही पड़ेगा। सो इन केस ऑफ प्रोपराइटर चला रहे थे, उसका पैन अलग था, अब उसका लीगल हेयर का पैन अलग होगा, तो फिर वो पुराने पैन पे नहीं चला सकता है। सेम विद द केस ऑफ अमालगमेशन, दो अलग कंपनियां थी, एक बन रही है, तो उसके लिए नया पैन मिल रहा है। करेक्ट। तो जब भी नया पैन मिल रहा है, तो आप पुराना रजिस्ट्रेशन कंटिन्यू नहीं कर सकते हो। करेक्ट। इन केस ऑफ डेथ, द लीगल हेयर और द एग्जीक्यूटर विल टेक द रजिस्ट्रेशन। So if I've supplied both, now let's come back. So this is clear. Now let's come back to Mrs. P's question on, sir, I have supplied both interstate goods and services and so obtained registration, but threshold limit is not crossed. So should I compulsory charge GST? Yes. If you have taken registration, you will have to charge. If you have taken the registration, then you don't see the turnover. So this turnover has to be seen before taking the registration. Once you are not registered, then you will say that, okay, I'm not registered because I did not make any interstate supply and I did not do any taxable services. But once you have done interstate supply of goods, then you have to take compulsory registration. Okay. Now I am a service provider. I am providing only services. My limit is not is not touched 20 lakh rupees. So I don't have to take registration because I am below the threshold limit. The first exception says that if you are providing taxable services, then you do not have to take registration, even if you do interstate supply of services. A consultant, a consultant provides services from one state to another state. Is charging monthly 1 lakh rupees. He need not take registration because his limit is only, he has limit is 20 lakhs and he's providing how much? Just 12 lakh rupees worth of services, not required to take registration. So there's a very good question which has been asked by Nilesh Kudbe. Sir, how GST authorities will identify whether entity has reached the threshold limit if entity is a retailer and nominally literally mostly does the purchase and sale in cash only? Whatever, cash we are not considered. So we are following under the GST regime called as self-assessment regime. So you will have to do a assessment of yourself. It is not just filing of returns. You are doing a assessment. So returns are called as the assessment returns, which means you will yourself assess and declare the details. And the government believes that the taxpayer, if he is liable to register, he will register. If he doesn't do the registration, then the officer will levy penalty on him, saying that you have not done the registration on time. But the main aspect is that it is a self-registration system or a self-assessment module and not the divided or decided by the government for every transaction. The law is given to you. You will have to see the transaction and take the registration. So after registration, GST is compulsory to pay without seeing limit. Correct. आपका क्या क्वेश्चन है निधि जी? मैंने आपका क्वेश्चन नहीं देखा है. Marriage Bureau provides services. Yes, they do provide services, right? So they will charge GST. It is not a license office because Marriage Bureau provides the services of identifying the bride and the groom. Correct? So they are providing the services and they will charge GST. A person making interstate supply of services and the threshold limit crosses 20 lakhs, he needs to get registration. Correct. You are right. If he crosses 20 lakhs, he will have to take registration. Okay. Now, the second exception of this interstate uh, taxable supply is if you're providing notified handicraft goods. Okay. There are some particular notified handicraft goods. There, until you touch the limit, you do not have to take registration. That is first compulsory registration. Second is a casual taxable person. A casual taxable person will have to take registration compulsorily. Exception is unless he's providing any notified handicraft goods, similar to what was there in first exception. Second exception, the point one, same year. If a person is providing notified handicraft goods, then he need not register up to the limit. And third, a person who's required to pay tax under RCM. I hope second point you are clear. Who is a casual taxable person? We are all aware of it, right? A casual taxable person and a non-registered taxable person. Casual taxable person is a person who is taking a registration in another state, who is going to another state and taking registration for a temporary purpose. जैसे वो किसी एग्जीबिशन के जा रहा है या फिर किसी और काम के लिए जा रहा है and he is taking a registration for a short duration. He is called as a casual taxable person who is not having permanent office there, but he is just going there, taking a temporary registration and coming back. He is called a casual taxable person. Any casual taxable person की लिमिट नहीं होता है. वो बोलता है सिर्फ मैं 5 लाख का सेल करूंगा सर, 20 लाख के नीचे तो रजिस्ट्रेशन जरूरी नहीं है. तब ही उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि आपके स्टेट में अगर आप नॉर्मल रजिस्ट्रेशन लेते हो तब 20 लाख का लिमिट और 40 लाख का लिमिट लागू होगा. लेकिन आप दूसरे स्टेट में आके बिजनेस करके जा रहे हो तब आपको थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट का बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. पर्सन हु मेक सप्लाई ओकेशनली. करेक्ट. करेक्ट. ठीक है. Third is a person who will have to take compulsory registration, a person who is required to pay tax under RCM. राइट. रिवर्स चार्ज मैकेनिज्म हमने देखा था चार्ज प्रोविजन में, दैट एनी पर्सन हु हैज टू पे जीएसटी अंडर रिवर्स चार्ज ही विल हैव टू ऑब्टेन रजिस्ट्रेशन. वो ये नहीं बोल सकता कि मेरा थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट नहीं. तो अ पर्सन हु हैज टू पे टैक्स अंडर रिवर्स चार्ज ही विल हैव टू टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन कंपल्सरली. पर्सन मेकिंग exclusively outward supply which is liable for RCM is exempted. मतलब a lawyer who is providing services उसका सभी टैक्स और रिवर्स चार्ज पे ही है. सो a lawyer providing services उसका टर्नओवर 1 crore भी रीच हो गया है. ओके. who is only providing services which is liable to RCM, उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन की जरूरत नहीं है. Okay, because he is exclusively providing services on which GST is to be paid under reverse charge basis, so he will not be required to register. But the person who is receiving even 1 lakh rupees worth of services from a lawyer, he will have to register and pay it because he is a person who is liable to pay reverse charge. ओके. नाउ हमने बोला दो चीज. अ सप्लायर is providing exclusive supplies on which reverse charge is payable. He will not be required to register except a person of metal scrap suppliers. This is the amendment which has happened, that a metal scrap supplier who is supplying for that reverse charge is payable, but the supplier of metal scrap also will have to register if he's a person who is making any supply. But the important aspect is a person who is paying reverse charge mechanism, उसे compulsory registration देनी ही पड़ेगी. Correct. Lawyer not required to take registration. Yes, lawyer is not required to take registration because उसको या फिर GTA, but GTA also who is not opting to take registration, उसे भी registration लेने की जरूरत नहीं, because all of this is paid by the recipient under reverse charge mechanism. Anand Ruthi, in Anand Rathi, in case of proprietorship, proprietor's death, if legal hire wants to close the business, but some payments from governments are pending. So that is a assessment part, right? We will deal with assessment, audit, and things in the final. That time you will understand that what happens in case of a death of a legal person. There is a provision which says that in case of a death, the legal heir, to the extent of the amount what he has, okay, he will have to pay GST to that extent. जो भी legal heirs का portion उसको जाता है, and if the dues are within that limit, then he will have to pay the GST dues. So nowhere GST dues will go away. But good application of mind that yes, you're thinking what happens in case of death, that new business comes in. Yes, new business will take over. For the previous liabilities, the legal here will still be liable. मेटल स्क्रैप सप्लायर कि अगर एक मेटल स्क्रैप जो सप्लाई करता है, कि किसी बिजनेस के पास स्क्रैप पड़ा है वो सप्लाई करता है, तो जिसको सप्लाई करता है वो रिवर्स चार्ज पे पे करेगा, करेक्ट। बट दूसरे केसेस में अगर मैं सिर्फ रिवर्स चार्ज का सप्लाई करता हूं तब मुझे रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है। लेकिन मेटल स्क्रैप के लिए ये नहीं कहा गया कि मेटल स्क्रैप सप्लायर जो भी सप्लाई करेगा उसे रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना ही पड़ेगा, इवन इफ द रिसीवर विल पे द रिवर्स चार्ज, लेकिन मेटल स्क्रैप सप्लायर को रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत है। ठीक है। नेक्स्ट इज इन केस ऑफ अ नॉन रेसिडेंट टैक्सेबल पर्सन, जैसे कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन विद इन इंडिया में सिटीजन होता है, एक स्टेट में दूसरे स्टेट में जाता है, वैसे ही फॉरेन कंट्री से नॉन रेसिडेंट पर्सन कम्स हियर एंड रजिस्टर, उसके लिए भी लिमिट नहीं है, उसे हर टर्नओवर के लिए टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा। ठीक है। फिर है ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर। ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर इज वन हु डज any kind of e-commerce transactions. However, supply of services below 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs can claim exemptions. Okay. Who only supply of services, supply of goods वाले को तो रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना ही पड़ेगा, बट सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज के लिए एक्सेप्शन मिलेगा। टीडीएस डिडक्टर को भी कंपलसरी रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना है। Agent will always have to take registration. Input service distributor and online information database access and retrieval services, these people and any person supplying online money game from a place outside India will have to take compulsory registration. So these people will have to take compulsory registration. उनको threshold limit देखने की जरूरत नहीं है। Person making interstate taxable supply of goods because services हट गया है। Casual taxable person, a person who is required to pay under RCM, non-resident taxable person, e-commerce operator, TDS deductor, agent, input service distributor, OIDAR, and any person doing online money giving services from a place outside India. So any person who supplies any online money gaming from a place outside India to a customer in India, they have to take registration compulsorily. Sir, we are seeing compulsory registration under GST, but they all are exempted from GST, from registration. How are they exempted from registration? मीनिंग ऑफ ई कॉमर्स, ई कॉमर्स का मतलब निधि जी ये है जब आप ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग करते हो, राइट, सप्लाई कोई और करता है, प्लेटफॉर्म किसी और का होता है। सो दैट ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म्स जैसे अमेजोन, आप सेलर कोई और रहेगा, ई कॉमर्स जो है उसको फुलफिल करेगा, तो उसे कहते हैं ई कॉमर्स। RCM is exempted. RCM is not exempted. No, RCM means what? Reverse charge mechanism. Where is reverse charge exempted? Only the supplier is exempted from taking registration, but the receiver will have to pay it. So it is not a exempted. Agar exempted hota, the receiver also would have claimed that exemption and he would not have paid. But in case of RCM, supplier is not paying, but the receiver is paying. That's the only difference. It is not exempted. Exempted would mean that neither the supplier will have to pay, neither the receiver will have to pay. Okay, that is called as exemption. But in case of RCM, it is not to be included in the turnover of supplier, but it will not be liable to be paid by the supplier, but it will be paid by the recipient. In case of GST, in case of metal scrap supplier, yes, Chauhan, in case of metal scrap supplier, GST will be paid by the recipient. It will always be paid by the recipient itself. Correct. E-commerce collects tax under 52. Yes, there are various aspects, Ishan, that where a recipient collects it, right? Then it is the liability of the e-commerce operator. There are 2-3 models of e-commerce operator. One is where e-commerce operator pays the taxes on behalf of the supplier. Other e-commerce operator, this the supplier will not pay, the e-commerce will not pay, the supplier itself will pay. So there are two categories of e-commerce. One is where the e-commerce pays it. Other is where the supplier themselves pay it. Yeah. So the metal scrap cases, Johan, it is very vulnerable. It is losing GST. Government is losing GST. That's why they've said that supplier also will have to pay register, even if he doesn't have to pay. So why should a person supplying online money gaming get registration even though he is situated outside India? Huh. Very good question. So what is GST payable on? What is the basis of GST? Is it a origin based taxation or destination based taxation? It is a destination based tax. So in case of online money gaming, who is the receiver? Who is ultimately getting the benefit? It is the consumption. So the customer is in India, right? So the customer who is in India, so the tax has to come to the Indian country. That is the reason in case of online money gaming, even if the supplier is outside India, he will have to take registration and he will have to pay GST because the end customer is not registered. And most of the online money gaming, the end customer is not registered. So that's where the supplier has to pay GST on it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Priyanshi.
Sir, I am confused in point number three that in RCM, recipient will pay the GST, right? But
Correct.
in metal scrap suppliers, the supplier will also pay the GST, even if it is RCM.
No, if it is RCM, supplier will not pay GST.
Then, sir, I was asking about exempted because it's written no person making exclusively outward supply liable to RCM is exempted. So,
Exempted from registration.
yes, sir, it is exempted from registration in supplier's point of view, right?
Correct.
Okay, recipient will get registered, no? And he
Correct.
will pay the GST.
Yes.
Okay, then, sir, why it accepted metal scrap suppliers?
Because now if I am supplier of services or supplier of goods, I don't have to take registration for RCM goods. Okay.
Okay,
Suppose
but for
tobacco
metal scrap
products.
supply, he will get registered.
Correct.
But
Correct.
the tax will, after all, will be paid by
Yes.
recipient only.
Receipt. Yes.
Okay,
But
okay, sir.
government wants to know that who is the metal scrap supplier supplied to. That is the reason they are telling him to still take the registration.
Okay, sir, got it now. Thank
Soumya's question is, can the supplier claim ITC? Yes, once he has to pay GST, then he will be a normal person, normal registered person, and he can claim ITC. Sir, so all e-commerce operators have to register compulsory? Yes, all e-commerce operators will have to take the registration compulsorily. So e-commerce operator, as there's a question, every e-commerce operator who is required to collect tax at source will have to take compulsory registration. And there are two, as we had said, there are two types of e-commerce operator. One e-commerce operator are persons who are required to pay tax. So they will pay tax on behalf of the supplier. So there is limited such people. That is like a cab, restaurant, cab services, or restaurant services, or all this house cleaning services. So only these three are the category of e-commerce operators who will pay GST on behalf of the supplier. So they will take compulsorily take registration. Other than this, suppose our Amazon, Flipkart, our Policy Bazaar, all of this, they don't pay taxes on behalf of the supplier. Supplier only will pay, but they will still have to take compulsory registration because they are required to collect tax at source and then remit the payment to the supplier. So they also have to take compulsory registration. Okay. But persons who supply goods through e-commerce, should they register? They should. However, supply of services below 10 lakh rupees can claim exemption. If I'm making any supply through e-commerce, I have a product, I'm supplying my goods through Amazon, right? I have to take compulsory registration without any threshold limit. But if I'm providing services through an e-commerce operator, right? Say a supply of services, how can it be? We have various e-commerce portals wherein they aggregate services and give it to the customers. There they can claim the threshold limit. Second is a threshold limit is available to persons making intrastate supply of goods through e-commerce, right? You are supplying it to, this is an amendment. So that's why I've highlighted in red, which will become very important. Generally, what I said, if you're making any supply through e-commerce, if it is interstate, I will have to take compulsory registration because first compulsory registration criteria said that if you're making any interstate supply, then you have to take compulsory registration. So if you supply directly or through an e-commerce operator, you have to take registration. Now, if you're making intrastate supply through this e-commerce, then you do not have to take registration up till the limit. Matlab, if I'm supplying goods through e-commerce and this e-commerce is making only intrastate supply, then I will get, if I'm a supplier of goods, I will get limit up to 40 lakh rupees that I don't have to take registration. So all e-commerce operators have to register compulsory under GST. Yes, that is right. Will urban clap come under e-commerce services? Yes, because who is the supplier? The plumber. And who is the receiver? The end customer. Both of them are connected directly? No, they are connected through Urban Clap, right? So Urban Clap is an e-commerce platform who's connecting the supplier and the recipient. So इंट्रास्टेट ई कॉमर्स का देखने हैं कि सप्लायर के गुड्स का जब हम ई कॉमर्स देखते हैं तो आपको देखना है कि आप इंट्रा स्टेट सप्लाई कर रहे हो या इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई कर रहे हो जैसे अभी नया कॉन्सेप्ट आ गया है क्विक कॉमर्स ओके क्विक कॉमर्स में क्या एग्जांपल्स हो सकता है जेप्टो ब्लिंकिट वगैरह जो आप उसको सप्लाई करते हो और वो किसको सप्लाई करते हैं विद इन द स्टेट ही सप्लाई करते हैं आउटसाइड द स्टेट से सप्लाई करते ही नहीं है ठीक है 5 मिनट में डिलीवरी 10 मिनट में डिलीवरी ऐसे एप्स आ गए जो इंट्रा स्टेट ही सप्लाई कर सकते हैं एक स्टेट से दूसरे स्टेट में 10 मिनट में तो होगा ही नहीं तो अगर आप ऐसे क्विक कॉमर्स वालों को सप्लाई करते हो तो फिर आपको पता है कि आप इंट्रा स्टेट सप्लाई ही कर रहे हो तब आपको 40 लाख तक का जिप्टो यस तब आपको 40 लाख तक का लिमिट मिल जाएगा Can you differentiate between e-commerce who supply directly and who is just a mediator? Yes. Suppose there is some cake shop या some flower shop. वो अपने खुद के वेबसाइट से सप्लाई कर रहे हैं. They are direct suppliers. But if you are using any of the platforms, then you are supplying it to an e-commerce operator. Clear? E-commerce के केसेस में this is very thing because ये नया वाला अमेंडमेंट है
सर मेरा डाउट ई कॉमर्स में ये था कि फॉर एग्जांपल अमेज़न पे मेरे गुड्स अभी जा रहे हैं और मेरे गुड्स सिर्फ इंटर स्टेट ही डिलीवर हो रहे हैं लेकिन अमेज़न तो इंटर स्टेट भी कर रहा है तो इस केस में लिमिट देखनी है कि नहीं
करेक्ट अमेजोन पे अगर आप सप्लाई कर रहे हो तो इंटरस्टेट भी हो सकता है इंट्रास्टेट भी हो सकता है तब आपको कंपलसरी रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा So what's their criteria for registration? For e-commerce operator, there is no criteria. With zero also, they will have to take it. Will Blinkit be also an example of this? Yes, because Blinkit also supplies only within the state. So Blinkit also is an example of a e-commerce. So Blinkit will have to compulsory registration because all e-commerce operator will have to take compulsory registration. But the supplier who is supplying his good through Blinkit, he will have to take registration only once he crosses 20 lakhs limit for services and 40 lakh limits for goods. लेकिन अमेजोन पे मेरे गुड्स इंट्रास्टेट है फिक्स। अगर इंट्रास्टेट है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में कि दैट, बिकॉज अमेजोन डजेंट ओनली डू इंट्रास्टेट, उनको तो कुछ भी कस्टमर आ गया दे विल सप्लाई इट, करेक्ट? सो यू कैन नॉट रीड दैट अमेजोन विल ऑब्लाइज बाय इट, राइट? तो वो मुश्किल है। Okay. Once we have understood this, let's proceed further. Persons who is compulsory required to registration, section 24 बोलता है. Now section 23, we couldn't grow in that order because we have to understand 24, तभी 23 understand हो पाएगा. 24 बोलता है कि कंपल्सरी रजिस्ट्रेशन किसको करना है, वो कैटेगरी है. 23 बोलता है जिनको रजिस्ट्रेशन liable nahi hai. That is, persons who are not liable for registration. That is, people who are engaged exclusively in the business of supplying goods and services, which is not liable to tax, or supply of wholly exempted goods or supply of services. Matlab, firstly, they are not doing any taxable supply. So they are doing only supply of goods or services, which is not liable to tax. और दे आर डीलिंग ओनली विद एग्जेम्प्टेड गुड्स, मतलब पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स, एक्सक्लूसिवली सिर्फ पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स. अगर पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स के साथ आप ऑयल भी बेचते हो तो फिर आपको ये एक्सेप्शन नहीं मिलेगा. देन यू विल हैव टू टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन, क्योंकि आपको सिर्फ पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स बेचना पड़ेगा. लेकिन पेट्रोलियम हमने देखा है कि पेट्रोल पंप में पेट्रोल पंप में जो भी है, अब वहां पे ऑयल भी बेचते हैं. तो ऑयल तो पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स नहीं है, और पेट्रोल का आपका टर्नओवर क्रॉस हो रहा है तब उनको रजिस्ट्रेशन आ जाएगा. बट अगर आप सिर्फ अल्कोहलिक लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन, हाँ, दैट विल कम अंडर दिस कैटेगरी बिकॉज यू आर सेलिंग ओनली अल्कोहलिक लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन, तब आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन की जरूरत नहीं है. या फिर आप सिर्फ एग्जाम सप्लाई करते हो, जैसे यहाँ पे एग्जाम्पल दिया मैंने, अ पर्सन हु इज एंगेज्ड एक्सक्लूसिवली इन सप्लाई ऑफ पेट्रोल, या फिर अ चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट विच इज डूइंग ओनली चैरिटेबल एक्टिविटीज. वो कुछ भी एक्टिविटीज दूसरे नहीं करते हैं, सिर्फ चैरिटेबल एक्टिविटीज करते हैं, दैट इज एग्जेम्प्टेड. तो फिर उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है उस ट्रस्ट को. लेकिन अगर वो ट्रस्ट एंगेज हो जाता है किसी supply of books या rental of premises, then they cannot get the concession of this registration. तो बहुत देखना पड़ेगा फैक्ट्स के बेसिस पे कि क्या सप्लाई करते हैं वो. अगर सिर्फ एक्सक्लूसिवली एग्जेम्प्टेड सप्लाई कर रहे हैं तो फिर एग्जेम्पशन मिलेगा. लेकिन एग्जेम्प्टेड के साथ थोड़ा भी टैक्सेबल सप्लाई हो गया तो फिर उनके एनुअल टर्नओवर, एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर में पूरा टर्नओवर इंक्लूड हो जाएगा एंड दे विल हैव टू टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन. ओके, सो इसीलिए कहा गया है कि यहाँ पे कि इफ दे आर डूइंग सप्लाई एंगेज एक्सक्लूसिवली इन द बिजनेस ऑफ सप्लाइंग गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, अगर एक्सक्लूसिवली दे आर सप्लाइंग गुड्स और सर्विसेज नॉट लायबल टू टैक्स, देन उनको रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है. सेकेंड इज एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ सप्लाई मेड आउट ऑफ द कल्टिवेशन ऑफ लैंड. ओके, सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर सप्लाई प्रोडक्ट सप्लाई करता है तब उसे रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं. नाउ व्हाट इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट? एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट मीन्स एन इंडिविजुअल और HUF who is undertaking cultivation of land by own labor or by the labor of his family or by the servant on wages or hired labor under the personal supervision or supervision of any member of the family. He is called an agriculturist. ठीक है, सो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट वो होता है जो खुद के लेबर से या अपने हायर किए हुए लेबर से सप्लाई करता है. ठीक है, अगर वो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस सप्लाई करता है तब उसे भी रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है. सो देयर आर ओनली टू कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल हु आर देयर अंडर 23. नो, देयर आर मोर पीपल, बट यहाँ पे समझने के लिए वी विल अंडरस्टैंड दैट यस, majorly these are the two categories, that who is exclusively engaged in supply of goods which is not liable to GST, and people who are under the agriculture, that is the agriculturist. Then further persons who are not liable for registration will be persons who are making only RCM supplies. जैसे हमने देखा था, I am making only RCM supplies. I am not making other taxable supplies. I do not have to take registration. Like in case of a GTA and who is providing services to a private limited company, GTA is not liable for registration here because here his services are under RCM and this private limited company will have to take registration. Persons making intrastate taxable supply of services up to 20 lakhs, correct? So 20 lakhs वालों को तो limit है ही है. Persons providing services through e-commerce, services, providing services through e-commerce, providing goods, we know that, providing services through e-commerce, then interstate supply of notified handicraft goods up to 20 lakh limits, interstate supply of notified products made by craftsmen, predominantly by hand, casual taxable person, and that not all cashable taxable, only who are dealing with handicraft goods or goods made by a craftsman, and commission agent for sale or purchase of agriculture produce. So principal should be taxable and supplies made by commission agent should be taxable. Only then they will register. But in case of a agriculture yard, like how we had discussed under that exemptions, that a commission agent who is dealing only in agriculture goods, he will not be required to take registration. Clear? Section 23, people who are not liable for registration. So much benefit given to agriculturist, no income tax on his earning, no registration in GST, then why farmers are poor and forced to suicide due to poverty? Because they produce the rate, the economical aspect is that the goods, what they produce, they are not getting that beneficial rate. That is the main reason than anything else. They produce something and the farm itself is being wiped away due to either excessive rain or to drought. So that is the situation at the ground reality. So one genuine question, okay, that we got e-commerce. If so, a supplier in intrastate supplying through their own website, the threshold will apply or compulsory. Threshold will apply because they are not dealing with the e-commerce, they are using their own website, so they will get the limit benefit. Last point of commission agent, Somya, that what is this point saying that persons are not liable for registration. So if you're a commission agent or yeah, for what? On sale or purchase of agriculture produce. So you're a commission agent for agriculture produce, then you get exemption because as we had seen under the exemption, what if you are a commission agent who is doing commission for agriculture produce, then you are exempted, correct? But the exception saying that if the principal is taxable and the commission agent is supplying goods which is liable to tax, that is you're a non agriculturist commission agent, then you will be liable for registration. But if you are doing commissioning work only for agriculture produce, then you do not have to register. Any other doubt? Clear. So let's proceed. Correct. PPT of all the chapters will be uploaded, John. You don't have to worry about it. Last ITC, you are able to see, right? Commission agent paying RCM required compulsory registration. Yeah, if a commission agent pays under reverse charge, suppose he's taken any services on which he has to pay reverse charge, then he will have to take compulsory registration. जीटीए वाला लाइन फिर से एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए। जीटीए, जो जीटीए है, अगर उसने ऑप्ट किया है कि मैं रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं लूंगा, तो उसका टैक्स कौन भरेगा? रिसीवर पे करेगा। करेक्ट। जो जीटीए का सर्विसेज ले रहा है वो रिवर्स चार्ज पे करेगा। तो उस केस में जब रिसीवर पे कर रहा है, तब सप्लायर या जीटीए को पास दो ऑप्शन है। या तो फिर वो रजिस्ट्रेशन ले सकता है या फिर वो रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं ले सकता है। अगर उसने ऑप्ट किया कि वो रजिस्ट्रेशन लेगा, तब वो जीएसटी पे करेगा। लेकिन अगर उसने ऑप्ट किया कि मैं रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं लूंगा, तब रिसीवर को जीटीए, रिसीवर को जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा। ठीक है। पर्सन्स नॉट लायबल फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन में एक और पॉइंट है। Such person's turnover shall not increase the threshold limit in the preceding financial year. मतलब persons who are not liable for registration intrastate supply of goods, जो हम बोल रहे थे उसमें थोड़े conditions हैं. Such persons turnover should not exceed the threshold limit in the preceding financial year and in the current financial year. So जो भी e-commerce operator को supply करते हैं and they are doing only intrastate supply through an e-commerce operator, their turnover should not cross the threshold limit in the current year definitely and in the previous year also. Such person should not make any interstate supply. करेक्ट है, क्योंकि अगर एक भी इंटरस्टेट सप्लाई हो गया तो रजिस्ट्रेशन कंपलसरी है. देन such person shall not make supply of goods through e-commerce in more than one state. तो हर एक दूसरे स्टेट में सप्लाई करे ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. यू शुड बी डूइंग ई कॉमर्स थ्रू सप्लाई ओनली इन वन स्टेट एंड सच पर्सन विल बी रिक्वायर्ड टू ऑब्टेन अ पैन नंबर, क्योंकि एटलीस्ट पैन तो जरूरी है, पैन नंबर लेना चाहिए. एंड सच पर्सन शैल बिफोर मेकिंग एनी सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स थ्रू ई कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर डिक्लेयर ऑन द पोर्टल. उनको एक डिक्लेरेशन देना पड़ेगा. क्या क्या डिक्लेयर करना पड़ेगा? देयर पैन, their address of the business, state in which such person seeks to make the supply, which shall be subject to validation on the common portal, and such persons have been granted an enrollment number on the common portal. उनको रजिस्ट्रेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन एनरोलमेंट नंबर लेना जरूरी है. दे हैव टू टेक अ एनरोलमेंट नंबर ऑन द जीएसटी पोर्टल बाय देयर पैन नंबर. एंड सच पर्सन शैल नॉट बी ग्रांटेड मोर देन वन एनरोलमेंट नंबर. करेक्ट, दे शुड गेट ओनली वन एनरोलमेंट नंबर. क्योंकि अगर वो हर एक ई कॉमर्स का 40 lakhs करेंगे, सो देन दे आर क्रॉसिंग द लिमिट. सो देयर overall limit in one state should not cross 40 lakhs. No supply of goods shall be made by such person through e-commerce unless such person has been granted an enrollment number. So e-commerce operator को किसी सप्लायर को ऑन बोर्डिंग के पहले उसको पूछना पड़ेगा कि आपका एनरोलमेंट नंबर क्या है. And where such persons are subsequently granted registration, the enrollment number will cease because they are doing lot of transactions and they're crossing the limit. Then they will have to take the registration compulsory. Until that limit, they have to take the enrollment number and use it. Clear? So totally 9 conditions are there for a supplier who is making an intrastate supply through an e-commerce operator. Clear? तो ऐसा नहीं है कि anybody can say yes, my turnover is less than 40 lakhs, so I don't have to take registration, and the receiver believe it because there is a loss of revenue to the government. So this mechanism is brought in to keep a check on them कि आपने कितना turnover किया है. Please re-explain point number 9 in Hindi. Sure. 9th point बोलता है that where such persons are subsequently granted registration under section 25. सेक्शन 25 क्या बोलता है कि आपका थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट 40 lakhs क्रॉस करने पे आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा. तो अगर आप ई कॉमर्स को सप्लाई करते करते आपका टर्नओवर बढ़ गया है तो फिर 40 lakhs के ऊपर जब हो जाएगा तब आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेनी पड़ेगी क्योंकि यहाँ पे क्या बोला है नॉट लायबल फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन अप टू द थ्रेशोल्ड. ऐसा नहीं कि उनका पूरे टर्नओवर पे एक्सेप्शन है. करेक्ट. फर्स्ट पॉइंट में हमने देखा प्रीवियस ईयर और इस ईयर अप टू द थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट रहना चाहिए. अगर इस ईयर आपका क्रॉस हो गया तो फिर आपको नॉर्मल रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा और आपका एनरोलमेंट ऑटोमेटिकली कैंसिल हो जाएगा. क्यों? क्योंकि वंस यू आर रजिस्टर्ड एवरी ईयर यू विल नॉट सी द थ्रेशोल्ड लिमिट. अगर आप एक बार रजिस्ट्रेशन ले चुके हो तो फिर आपको हर साल जीएसटी पे आपको सप्लाई पे जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा. राइट. So this is a very important thing because this is a recent amendment that intrastate supply through e-commerce has these additional conditions. Okay. Any doubts till here? To summarize, like a smart summary, persons engaged inclusively in goods or services not liable to tax, which is wholly exempt from tax. They are not liable for registration. Agriculturist, persons making only reverse charge supplies, persons making intrastate supplies of services up to 20 lakhs, persons making intrastate supply of notified handicraft goods, casual taxable person who is dealing in handicraft goods up to 20 lakhs. So these are the people who are not liable for registration. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes and we'll continue with the procedural aspects for GST. That is the procedural aspects for registration. So can we continue? Okay. So some questions in the chat box while we were on the break. Point number 9, I think that is clear. Handicraft goods, yes. कि handicraft goods में जब आप डील करते हो तब आपको कंपलसरी रजिस्ट्रेशन को लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. अगर आप हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स में डील करते हो तो देन आपका लिमिट तक आपको एक्सेप्शन मिल जाएगा. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है ना हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स, नोटिफाइड हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स. अगर आप नोटिफाइड हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स में डील करते हो देन यू गेट द लिमिट. अगर आप इंटरस्टेट भी सप्लाई करते हो ऑफ लेकिन हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड, तब योर लिमिट विल बी अप टू 20 लाख रुपीज इन ऑल स्टेट्स एंड 10 lakhs in 4 states. Okay. Only handicraft goods? Yes, because the exception is carved out only for handicraft goods. Clear, Nidhi, on the handicraft goods part? जैसे लेदर गुड्स है, कार्व्ड वुड प्रोडक्ट्स है, वुड टर्निंग, बैम्बू प्रोडक्ट्स, टेक्सटाइल हैंड प्रिंटिंग, डॉल्स. So these are the few examples of that notified handicraft goods. Okay. Now we have understood section 24 compulsory registration, and persons are not liable to be registered under 23, and this aspects of when you make intrastate supply of goods through e-commerce. Okay. Now we'll go to the procedure for registration, saying what is the procedure for registration and how is it done. We have to remember the handicraft goods. No, it is, you don't have to remember the category because it is only given as a footnote in your material also. So you do not have to remember that. What is the procedure for registration? It is that you have to apply for registration. Okay. You have to apply for the registration through REG01. That is the application form. You have to apply for the registration through REG01, and you don't have to write it physically. You have to apply it online itself. So the registration and returns process is all online. No manual application is permitted nor allowed. So you have to make an application online itself, and the registration is through REG01. And something is called as UIN. UIN is unique identification number, which is granted in a UIN in a centralized manner. But who is it granted to? UIN is granted to a embassy office or a office of United Nations, a person who is having an embassy in India, and they also consume services in India, right? So for them, they will get a UIN number. UIN is not like a registered person. But why do they give the UIN number? They give the UIN number because the person who is procuring services in India, the supplier will charge, and this UIN can claim a refund, like a embassy's office in India. The government doesn't want to burden them, but they don't want to break the chain of ITC. So the supplier will normally charge GST. This UIN holder will take all these details and apply for the refund. SEZ, this is very important. SEZ within the state, right? You are in the state of Tamil Nadu, and in the Tamil Nadu state, you have another SEZ unit. Now, both are in the same state. So, will you take separate registration for this SEZ or no? Is it like SIN for companies? Something like that. Like you have a unique number for the companies, like that, you have a unique number for these entities. So we know that a registration in one state, we can take one registration or multiple registrations. Now, if I have to opt for only one registration, saying that all my accounts is centralized, okay, and in one state you have normal registration and you have a special economic zone, which is a SEZ unit. So, can you take one registration and mention the details of SEZ unit in that registration? Yes or no? Yeah. What is your opinion? Separate registration outside one SEZ? Yes. Priyanshi, are you trying to say yes, in one registration we can include the SEZ also? UIN का मतलब होता है यूनिक आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर निधि. जो यूनिक आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर होता है उसे कहते हैं निधि. उसे कहते हैं यूआईएन नंबर. So you are all saying that we have to take different registration for a SEZ. Correct. If in the same state also, if you have a entity which is within the state, in that state itself, because SEZ तो कहीं दूसरे state में नहीं रहेगा, it will be in one of these state itself. So even if a SEZ is there in the same state, for that SEZ you have to take separate registration. The reason is simple, that SEZ is considered to be a place outside India for all tax purposes. So SEZ, even though it is in one state, SEZ is a special economic zone. It is given special treatment. So SEZ unit will have to take a registration, separate registration, even if it is within the state. Clear? So SEZ within the state or outside the state, you have to take a separate registration for it. Sir, each SEZ separate registration? Yes. अगर आपके पास 5 SEZ units है, सभी का मिलके एक नहीं हो सकता है. For each SEZ, you have to take separate registration. Right? Even if it's same state, you have to take separate registration. Per SEZ, per registration, you're right. Casual taxable person or non-resident taxable person. What is this person? A casual taxable person means a person who has no fixed place of business in a state. उसका एक नए स्टेट में जा रहा है और उसमें उसका फिक्स प्लेस नहीं. So he's not having a fixed place of business in that state from where he wants to take a supply. He is registered in Karnataka. Karnataka mein he is a normal registered person. He wants to go to another state, wants to permanently set up there. He will take another permanent registration, which is called normal registration. But if he's going there for an exhibition, he's going there for an event, he's going to check out whether that place has few customers and he's making supplies from there. There, he is not he wants to undertake a business, but he's not having a fixed place of business. So that person is called a casual taxable person, and casual taxable person needs to register in every state from where he wants to do a business. He is going to Andhra Pradesh, there he will take a separate CTP registration. He is going to Himachal Pradesh, from there he will take a separate registration. Each state, wherever he goes, he will have to take that casual taxable person registration. Once he comes back, that registration he goes will get cancelled. He wants to go back there, he will have to take new registration. So it is qua that state and qua every visit. Okay. If he's taking a registration, he's having multiple exhibitions, he can continue that as long as the validity is there. After the validity gets over, he's saying, no, I want to activate it. He cannot do it. And there is a specified time period. Up till that time period, he can use that because he has to remit GST for whatever sales he makes during that period. Similarly, is non-resident taxable person. The only difference between CTP and RTP is CTP has a place in a state, he's going to another state. Non-resident person, as we know, non-resident, he is not resident of India itself. He's not having a fixed place of business in India. And NRTP also needs to register in the state from where he seeks to make a supply. The common point for both of them is CTP and NRTP. Their turnover is below 1.5 crores, but still they cannot opt for composition levy. And there is no concept of centralized scheme for both of them. Okay. What? यूएन वाला पॉइंट, यूनिक आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर एक सिंपल नंबर होता है जो यूनाइटेड नेशंस या फॉरेन कंट्री से जो एम्बसी ऑफिसर्स आते हैं यहाँ पे, उनके लिए यूआईएन नंबर जनरेट होता है. जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन उनको नहीं होगा क्योंकि वो सप्लाई तो कुछ नहीं करते हैं, सिर्फ दूसरे कंट्रीज का रिप्रेजेंटेशन रहने के लिए यहाँ पे वो एम्बसी ऑफिस खोलते हैं. Can the CTP and RTP claim ITC? Yes, they can claim ITC. There is no restriction on that. Now, timeline for application. कितने दिन में एप्लीकेशन करना पड़ेगा? अगर आपको कंपलसरी रजिस्ट्रेशन के प्रोविजंस लागू है या फिर आपको 22 क्या बोलता है कि आपका लिमिट क्रॉस हो गया तब आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन अप्लाई करना है. सो इफ यू आर लायबल फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन अंडर 22 और 24, देन within 30 days from the date when you become liable for registration, you have to apply. कि आपका लिमिट हो गया है और आपको रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना है. आपका लिमिट हो गया तो तब से लिमिट क्रॉस हुआ तब से 30 डेज में अप्लाई कीजिए. और आपने किसी लॉयर का इनवॉइस मिला है आपको पे करना है, तब उसके इनवॉइस के 30 डेज में आपको अप्लाई करना ही पड़ेगा. सो दैट इज द टाइम लिमिट, क्योंकि मेरे को रजिस्ट्रेशन करना है, मैं कभी भी करूंगा ऐसे नहीं रह सकता है. सो यू हैव टू रजिस्टर विद इन 30 days from when you become liable for registration. So today you're becoming liable for registration. Should you apply today itself, you may be having some constraints. So the government is giving you 30 days time limit. Within 30 days, you can apply for registration. But for a CTP and NRTP, you will not get 30 days because you have to start your business fast. That's why you have to apply 5 days prior to the commencement of the business. Before you commence your business, 5 days prior to that, you have to apply for that. So a CTP and NRTP will have to apply 5 days before the registration, before the commencement of the business, because you want to commence the business. Now you want to have the registration. You cannot commence and then take the registration. For a CTP and NRTP, you have to have the registration in advance. So before doing any business, 5 days prior to that, you have to get the registration. Once registration per state, there's no concept of centralized registration, separate state-wise registration. And if you have multiple business, you can add a principal place of business and additional place of business. Option to obtain independent registration with respect to each place of business. This we have discussed, right? So if you have multiple branches in a state, you can opt to take multiple registration or you can take single registration. In such case, if you have multiple registration, each shall be treated as a distinct person and transaction between them will be taxable. So what is this concept of distinct person? Here we will discuss first that uh, a multiple distinct persons could be of two types. First type is you're having multiple registrations in one state, or you're having registration in one state and establishment in another state. So these are two types of distinct person. What is the meaning of distinct person? That if you are doing any transactions, if you're doing any transaction between these two persons, you're having the same PAN, but any transactions between distinct persons will be liable for GST. Now take an example. You have opened up a shop in the state of, in the city of Delhi. Okay, one city in Delhi, you have taken up a shop and you're doing business there. Now you want to expand it, you're opening another branch. Now that another branch, for that, should you take registration or no? You have option. So it's not a compulsion. You have an option. If you want, you can maintain the books of accounts, both one, consolidate everything and file one GST return. In that case, that other branch address, you will add it here as additional place of business. Okay, that is option one. Second option is no, I want to have separate books of accounts. I want each of them to be handling independently. So I will have a separate registration for that branch. So you can have a separate registration for that. If you have separate registration, then it is called as a distinct person. The impact is each registration is separate. Any stock transfer you do from go down from the shop A to shop B will be liable for GST. But in first case where you had one registration and two shops, any stock transfer from branch A to branch B, shop A to shop B will not be liable for GST. That is within the state. That is first point. Second, you have a registration in one state, another state you're supplying anything, it is definitely liable for GST whether that other branch is registered or not. Okay. That is the concept of distinct person. निधि जी, इसको आप है ना अगर मॉड्यूल लेके जाऊंगा तो मेरा टेक्निक ये नहीं है कि मैं मॉड्यूल सिखाऊं, बिकॉज मॉड्यूल्स में ऑलरेडी दिए गए हैं विच यू ऑलरेडी हैव. मैंने सिखाने के लिए प्रेजेंटेशन बनाया. आप अगर प्रेजेंटेशन पढ़ोगे फिर मॉड्यूल पूरा पढ़ोगे चैप्टर वाइज तो आपको कनेक्शन मिल जाएगा. ऐसा कोई भी टॉपिक नहीं है जो मैं मॉड्यूल्स के बिना किया हूं, और ऐसा कोई मॉड्यूल में ये नहीं है कि आपको मिलेगा नहीं. एवरीथिंग यू विल फाइंड इन द मॉड्यूल. So if you apply for registration today and if it takes 2 months for registration number to come, what would be the month of GST return filing in that case? We'll come to that, but for your understanding, you will, if you have applied on time, then your registration will be from the date of application. If it is compulsory registration, so from the date when your effective date is mentioned, from that period onwards, you have to file your GST returns. Okay. So this is the understanding of distinct person. What we are discussing is that you can have obtain a option is available to obtain independent registration with respect to each such separate place of business, or in such case treated as a distinct person. Okay, you have the option here. Just one moment. Yeah. And in case of a composition levy, if opted for regular in one place, then you cannot opt for composition in another place. This we have understood already, that when you are taking a composition registration, if you take composition registration in one branch, in all other branches, you have to take composition registration. There is no option that one branch is composition, one is regular, not possible. Okay. If one place saying it is not eligible for composition because you are dealing in those restricted goods, then other places also you cannot take it. It has to be that registration for composition. If it is one is composition, everywhere it has to be composition itself. voluntary registration, when you're not liable for compulsory registration under 22 or 24. And if your turnover is below the threshold limit, still you want to opt it, you can take it. Then you will get the registration, which is called as voluntary registration. Once you register and your turnover dips down to the below the threshold limit, still you will have to continue collecting tax and payment of tax. Distinct person we understood. Then for every registration, PAN is compulsory, even for a casual taxable person. But for non-residential taxable person, it is not compulsory because non-resident person is outside India. You cannot expect him to have a PAN. So he will not be having a PAN number. And person under section 51, that is people who are required to register for TDS payments, they can apply through a TAN number also. So only section 51, that is TDS deductors, instead of PAN, they can have TAN, and NRTP PAN not required. Other than that, everybody should have a PAN for registration. UIN is any specialized agency for the United Nations organizations. Why do you give the number to them? For claiming refund. They are not registered person, so return will not be filed. Centralized UIN for all operations, and issue UIN number within 3 working days. This is on the UIN part. Meaning of undergo authentication. Undergo authentication means they will have to go to a center and get themselves authenticated. Okay, that is called as undergoing authentication. What is TAN? Like how you have a permanent account number, right? Like that for PDS deduction, you get a transaction account number. That is called as TAN number. So UIN, these are the only points, not much complicated. You take a UIN for claiming refund. They are not registered person. You do not get, you get a centralized UIN number, and you once the UIN holder applies, within 30 days, within 3 days, they have to give the number to them. Suo motu registration. When you do not apply for registration, even if you have crossed the limit and the officer finds out through investigation or various other modes, if they find out that you have crossed the limit, right, then you will be granted registration by the officer. Okay, that is called as suo motu registration, which is registration given by the officer is called as suo motu registration. Now, this suo motu registration, what is given by the officer, will not be permanent registration. It's only a temporary registration because all the details the officer does not have. He will give a temporary registration, and within this 90 days from the receipt of the temporary registration, you have to submit application and get the temporary registration converted to a permanent registration number. If you're doing that, fine. Otherwise, you have to file an appeal against it, saying that I am not registered. The officer has given me the registration forcefully. Because there has to be some action. Now, that action says that if you have got the registration, then you cannot ignore it. Within 90 days, convert that temporary into permanent. Or if you're saying that is not to be given, then you file an appeal against it. And if you file an appeal, then apply for registration. And if it is rejected, saying that no, you are supposed to register, you have not registered. Even at the appeal level, if they have rejected it, then you have to compulsory register. So that is the aspect of suo motu registration. Procedure for registration, you have to apply through REG 01, right? For all type of taxable persons, basically a normal registered taxable person, casual taxable person, voluntary registration, and composition levy registration. Special registration process is there for non-resident taxable person, a person who's deducting TDS, TCS, OIDR, or person supplying online money gaming, right? And for a SEZ, as we had discussed, even if having a place in the same state, still separate registration is required. सुओ मोटो का मतलब धनुष सिंपल है कि सुओ मोटो दैट यू आर नॉट एक्टिव. You cannot just say, okay, I will not register. What will the officer do? Let him do. What powers will he have? That's why to empower the officer, they're given this power saying that they will get power to get you registered. Only a year and they will give you the registration. Saying that you are liable for registration. Your limit is crossing. Why are you not registering? So we will get you registration and they will tell him to file the returns. That is called suo motu registration. Now, what is the validity of that? That is valid for 90 days because for filing a normal registration, you have to give all your address, PAN number, and other details. But when the officer is himself doing it, he will not have all these details. That's why it is a temporary registration only. Within 90 days, convert it. If you are converting it, good. If you're not converting, file an appeal saying that I am not supposed to register. Then who will hear that? That officer will not hear. Some other officer higher to him will hear saying that whether to decide should you register or not. And if he also confirms, no, you have to register, then within 30 days, you have to apply for registration. Now, what is the process for registration? How does the registration process happen? You have to apply for registration in this form called REG 01. Okay, we have to apply for the registration in REG 01. Okay, what all this will this have? This will have only three details: PAN number, mobile number, and email ID. PAN number, mobile number, and email ID. PAN number, you put it, it will go to the income tax portal, cross check it, and verify whether it is correct. So PAN will be verified in the portal, verification in the income tax portal. With your number, they will cross exchange and check whether the name, what you are giving, and name in the PAN is correct. Mobile number will get verified. You cannot, generally we do this, no, that when we are not happy with somebody, we will, for customer care, will give his number so that customer care will keep calling him and troubling him. That cannot happen in GST because it has to be authenticated through an OTP. So if you're giving your other person's mobile number, he has to give that OTP also. So that's why you have to give your mobile number and your email ID because it will get cross-checked through the OTP. So this is basic test. Once this is there in part A. So once you give this basic details, it gets validated and then you go to the next step. So once you do this, you get a ARN number, application reference number is generated. Okay. From this ARN, you go to the next step, which is called as part B. From part B, you submit the details one by one, your address, your authorized signatory, your directors, the goods, what you deal in, everything has to be submitted in REG 1 part B. Okay. Once you submit, enter all the details and submit along with the required documents. You will get an acknowledgement saying that yes, we have applied for application. Now, this acknowledgement is coming in REG 02. If details are all complete, then within 3 working days, you will get a registration certificate. If no, then you will get a notice, which is called as a show cause notice in REG 03 saying that what is the additional details or clarifications which will require. This will come from whom? From the officer. He will verify it and ask for additional details. You will provide these additional details. And within 7 days, again, if the details are correct, you will get a registration again. Or if it is rejected, you will get a rejection order. Registration form, sure, Soumya. In the next session, if possible, I will show that to you on a portal itself. So that will be helpful for you, definitely. So this is the registration process. Now, there is some changes. That was a simple registration process. But then what happened? There used to be some in dealers who used to just take the registration and do fraudulent things. So government wanted some control. They said that if this process is carried, then we will not have any control. So we need to have a better control. So what we will do, we will increase the timelines and we will also increase how the registration happens. So what they said is we will do a process called as Aadhaar authentication. Okay. So they got this process that proper exam after part one, that is your basic PAN, email ID, and phone number gets validated. Then in part two, once you submit all the application details, if the officer examines and he finds everything is correct, then he will grant the registration within 7 working days. Okay. From the date of submission of application, if the applicant successfully validates his Aadhaar authentication. In the part two, you have apart from PAN, mobile number and email ID, in the second part B, you have an option of Aadhaar authentication, saying that you give your Aadhaar number and if it is authenticated, then within 7 days you will get your registration. If registration is, if you fail to get the Aadhaar authenticator or you do not opt for it, you have a Aadhaar, but you don't want to do the Aadhaar authentication. In that case, what happens? If you fail to undergo the Aadhaar authentication, or when the proper officer, that is a person who is giving you the registration, there are officers are called as proper officer under GST because each officer has to have that proper authority. That's why they're called as proper officer. That proper officer deems it fit to carry out site verification. That is based on the nature of information, based on the investigation or the intelligence what they have. They want to do a verification. So if they feel that they have to do verification, then they will do it within a period of 30 days. So normally it is 7 working days. But if that is when Aadhaar is authenticated, if Aadhaar is not authenticated and you're a suspicious client, then the registration will come within 30 days. Or when a person who has undergone Aadhaar authentication is or identified, he's done Aadhaar authentication, but there are some database which the department has which says that on the common data portal, based on the data analysis and risk parameters, it is required that he had previous registration, his track record is available, he's been doing fraudulent things, he is not doing the returns filing properly, then his PAN will be under the risk parameters, which will require the officer to do the physical verification of the premises. In such case, the officer gets extra time. So in these three situations, they get extra time to grant registration within 30 days. If no proper officer is not satisfied with this, if it is in order, then he has to do within 7 years and 30 days respectively. But if it is not in order, the documents are not in order, then the proper officer issues a notice seeking clarification, and then within 7 working days from the application case, he will give the registration. And in this cases where 30 days again, where he fails to undergo Aadhaar authentication and if feels deemed or it is under risk parameter, then again 30 days he gets. So 7 plus 7, that is 14 days, you will get a registration if you are Aadhaar authenticated and you are not falling under the risk criteria. If you are falling under the risk criteria, then the officer gets 30 plus 30, 60 days. Okay. Now, if the officer raises a query and the applicant has furnished the clarification within time of 7 days, then if the proper officer is satisfied with it, then proper officer will grant registration within 7 working days. If no, even after asking query, officer is not satisfied, then the proper officer will reject your application. So most of the time these days, we are facing that registration is becoming very tough and we are not able to get the registration. What is common portal? Common portal means the portal which is notified by the government. www.gst.gov.in is the common portal. That is the portal where you apply for registration. Deemed approval of registration, saying that whatever the officer does, he does, but whatever I am giving, if he's not checking, then what happens? That's why there is an option of deemed approval, saying that if the officer is not active, he fails to take any action, then the application, whatever submitted, will be deemed. That is, in case where a person has successfully undergone authentication of Aadhaar number, then within a period of 7 working days from the date of submission of application, you will be deemed that you have got the registration. Okay, if you have done everything correctly, there is no mistakes. Officer cannot get any number of days to approve the registration. He will get only 7 working days. Within 7 working days, he will not do anything. You will get the registration automatically. And in case where Aadhaar is not authenticated, then also within 13 working days, he has to take some action. Either he has to give a notice or he has to reject it. He cannot reject it because he has to give you a notice. So if he gives you a notice, then he gets the time. If it does not give you a notice, then again, it is treated as your registration is granted. And in case where proper officer issues notice and you're given clarification also, then again within 7 working days, it is deemed as registration is allowed. Now, who has to get this Aadhaar authentication? If it's an individual, the person who is not a citizen, is not mandatory. But if an individual is a citizen, then he has to get a Aadhaar, because Aadhaar is given only to Indian citizens. So a person who is a not citizen, then he will not be required, right? Because who is having something, he can only do anything. Now, he is not given a Aadhaar, so you cannot expect from a non-citizen to get the Aadhaar authentication. So that Aadhaar authentication will happen only by a person who is citizen of India, authorized signatory of all types, managing or authorized partners. Authorized signatory means in case of a company, it will be a director. In case of a trust, it will be the trustee. And in case of an individual, it will be a karta. So these are the persons who will have to get the Aadhaar authentication. And these people are exempted, that they don't have to get the Aadhaar authentication. Who are they? Firstly, as we had discussed, person who is not a citizen of India, department or establishment of central government or a state government. SG means state government, CG means central government, local authority, statutory body, public undertaking, public sector undertaking, PSUs, and a person applying for UIM. So this is fine, no? They are all government officers. Their details already government has, so they do not have to undergo Aadhaar authentication. Right? Risk-based biometric-based Aadhaar authentication. This is a new system which is started in specific states of Gujarat, Pondicherry, and Andhra Pradesh, wherein just Aadhaar is not sufficient. It has to get biometrically verified. So you'll have to go to a center, give that the authorized person will have to get a biometric verification done. Only then they will get the registration. Now, as we had discussed previously, Aadhaar authentication, who should do? For a proprietorship concern, the proprietor itself. For a partnership firm, the partners. In the case of a HUF, the karta. In case of a company, it will of course be the directors. In case of a foreign company, it will be the authorized signatory, or the person who is in charge in India. In case of LLP, any designated partners. In case of a society, club, trust, it will be any of the managing committee members. And in other cases, it will be the person in charge. Because most of the cases are covered here. Say there is something like a association of person. Then who will get the Aadhaar authentication? The person who is in charge of that AOP, he will get that authentication done. Okay. Persons who are already registered, if Aadhaar authentication is not correct for them, because this started recently, earlier registration was already granted. So in that case, what will happen? They have to file They have to still authorize, because if they don't file it, then this following functions will not be available. What are those functions? Filing of application for revocation of cancellation. They will not be able to revoke their cancellation. They'll not be able to apply for refund. So old people, because initially when the GST registration started, that time Aadhaar authentication was not compulsory. It only started in 2022 that Aadhaar authentication became mandatory. So those people who had registered before, they will have to get the Aadhaar authentication. Otherwise, the implication is they cannot apply for revocation of cancellation and they cannot apply for refund. So registration, as we have seen, we are explaining this in different ways. Option one, do the Aadhaar authentication. If you do it through Aadhaar OTP, then RC registration certificate will be granted within 7 days. If you do not get to the Aadhaar authentication, then officer will conduct the physical verification. See, the registration process will get delayed. So you do your Aadhaar authentication. If you don't do, what will happen? The officer will come and trouble you. He will do the physical verification. He will find some mistakes, right? Because after physical verification of the principal place of business, RC will be granted. That is registration certificate. What is the strike off part? In presence of the said person. That means earlier what used to happen was when the officer used to come for physical verification, the person, or say the director, the proprietor, the main person, what we have seen in the list, he is supposed to be present. Sometimes he may not be present, but the officer has come and has found everything correct. That's why this condition is removed, that in presence of the such person. Officer is coming, that person is not there, any other person is there, that is also valid. So this is the amendment which you will have to see. If you get any question saying that the officer has come and they have found that the person in charge, the proprietor, is not there, and they have cancelled the registration or they have not given the registration, is it valid? So your answer should be no, it is not valid, because the requirement of physical presence of the person is not required anymore. If the officer has come, he has satisfied all the conditions, then he should grant the registration certificate. And if the proper officer fails to pay issue within 30 days, then of course deemed registration.
हेलो सर।
Yes, Shankar Kumar.
सर, मैं पूछना चाह रहा था कि जीएसटी में जो हमारा ऑनलाइन रसीद जो लगता है, ये जमाबंदी का, अगर ऑफलाइन अगर किसी का रसीद हो तो क्या उसका जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं हो पाएगा क्या?
क्या समझे नहीं?
जो लैंड का जो रसीद कटता है ना, वो सालाना जो कटता है हमारा,
प्रॉपर्टी
जो,
टैक्स।
हाँ, प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स, अगर वो ऑफलाइन अगर हो तो क्या वो क्या एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं होगा जीएसटी में?
आउटलाइन मतलब?
मतलब ऑफलाइन मतलब पहले का रसीद कटा हो, अभी मतलब कि उसका अपडेट नहीं हो, तो क्या वो उस लाइन पर वो क्या जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं ले पाएगा क्या?
नहीं, वो जरूरी नहीं है, क्योंकि उसमें बिल्डर का नाम है बस, वो काफी है। ऐसा नहीं है कि लेटेस्ट ही रहना चाहिए।
नहीं नहीं, जैसे हम मेरे क्षेत्र में जो है, जो असेसिंग ऑफिसर, वो बोले कि ऑनलाइन रसीद होना आवश्यक है। ऑफलाइन में
अच्छा।
हम जो है डेटा पोर्टल पर
हम्म।
चेक नहीं कर पाएंगे कि आपका
हम्म।
जो है एग्जैक्टली जो है लैंड वहीं पर है, ऐसा
ओके,
बोला गया है।
ठीक है, ये गलत है। अभी रिसेंटली लास्ट मंथ में रजिस्ट्रेशन का एक डिटेल्ड प्रोसीजर दिया गया है। उसमें काफी सारे ऑफिसर रजिस्ट्रेशन ठीक से नहीं दे रहे हैं, तो उसमें एक लिस्ट बना दिया गया है कि ऑफिसर
अच्छा
उसी लिस्ट को मान सकते हैं, उसके अलावा कोई और डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं मांग सकते हैं वो।
अच्छा, और एक और बात सर, म्यूनिसिपल कॉरपोरेशन का जो टैक्स कटती है उसके आधार पर हमारा क्या रजिस्ट्रेशन हो पाएगी?
हाँ, वो एड्रेस प्रूफ के लिए काम आ सकता है।
हाँ, मतलब कि मतलब मान लिया जाए मेरा जो अगर जिस जिस जगह पर है वहाँ का म्यूनिसिपल टैक्स का रसीद अगर लगा दिया जाए तो हमारा
हम्म,
रजिस्ट्रेशन क्या वो दे पाएंगे तो?
हाँ, दे सकते हैं।
हम्म। नहीं, वो कह रहे थे कि क्या अपडेट होना चाहिए, मतलब पूरा हमारा टैक्स प्रॉपर्टी अपडेट होना चाहिए,
नहीं, ऐसा
तभी
कोई
जो है।
जरूरी नहीं। तो ये सब
अच्छा अच्छा।
ऑफिसर का ही खुद का बनाया हुआ लॉ है। एक्चुअल में ये सब कुछ
अच्छा अच्छा।
जरूरी नहीं।
मतलब कि हमारा नाम खाली होना चाहिए,
करेक्ट।
जो हमारा जो जिसको हम लोग केवाला बोलते हैं,
ओके।
हमारे साइड में प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स का एग्रीमेंट जो होता है,
हम्म।
तो उसमें उसको शो करने उनको, अगर मान लीजिए ऑफलाइन जाकर उनको जमा करने पर वो क्या रजिस्ट्रेशन दे पाएंगे तो?
दे सकते हैं, दे सकते हैं।
ओके ओके, थैंक यू।
Okay. So that is a practical challenge, like how he was explaining that a lot of things are happening that we are not able to get the registration smoothly. So we have to deal with the officer and try to convince them, saying that this is what is the law, this is the notification, and this is the clarification which is given. Once you inform them, they will have to provide the registration certificate. So this we had seen that people are already registered. They will have to still undergo Aadhaar authentication and they have to furnish the following details: his Aadhaar slip, bank account, voter ID, passport, or any driving license. Now, apart from Aadhaar authentication, bank account details. We have to give our bank account details. If we do not give, then what happens? Our registration is kind of incomplete because when you apply for registration, you have to give the bank details. If you do not give the bank details, how will the officer get to know what is the bank you're operating? Because if you do any fraudulent things, the officer will have to attach your bank. Correct? Attach the bank means he will freeze your bank to get the revenue for GST. Now, if you do not give the bank details, still registration is given, but you have to give your bank details within a specified time limit. What is that time limit? The bank account details of the proprietor or the entity has to be given at the time of application. Now, if it is not available at the time of application, it has to be submitted within 30 days. 30 days of what? 30 days of grant of registration or the date of furnishing details of outward supply, whichever is earlier. Now, what is the strike off part? Earlier, that limit was 45 days. Now it is reduced to 30 days. And earlier it was the date of furnishing returns, which is GSTR 3B return. Now they've said before filing the GSTR 1. Before you file your GSTR 1, you should give this details or 45 days, whichever is earlier, or 30 days or date of filing GSTR 1, whichever is earlier. So giving bank account details is required. Otherwise, your account, your registration will get suspended. Okay. But for TDS and TCS collectors and suo moto registration, bank account has to be mandatorily given. Only for these three people, you will not get time. For other people, you will get. Okay. For these three people, TDS, TCS collector, suo moto registration, TDS deductor, TCS collector, and suo moto registration. These three people, bank account has to be immediately given. You will not get 30 days time. For normal registration, you'll get 30 days time. If you do not provide these details, the system will automatically suspend and automatic revocation will happen once you submit it. So physical verification, when it will happen, where the proper officer is satisfied that physical verification, PV means physical verification, PO means proper officer. If the proper officer is satisfied that physical verification is required after the grant of registration, he can still do it. Then PO shall upload the physical verification report. Okay. Once you get a registration, it is not compulsory that the officer cannot do physical verification. Based on risk-based parameters, they can open up the case and see that the physical verification is done. Okay. So in such cases, physical verification will be required. Now, which are the scenarios where physical verification is required? That risk-based parameters. And the once it is required, then the officer will come to the premises, do a physical verification. And the proper officer shall upload the physical verification report with documents and photographs within 15 working days from the date of verification. They are also have time bound, like how once we apply, we have to submit the response on time. For them also, there is time bound that once you do a physical verification, within 15 days, you have to upload it. And where physical verification is required before grant of registration, there PO shall upload the physical verification report or documents 5 working days prior to the completion of time period. That is the normal time period is 30 days. So within 25 days, that is 5 days prior to that, by the 25th day, they have to upload the report. So two things. One is before registration, they are very much tight bound within 25 days. That is 5 days before the expiry date, they have to upload. And where physical verification is required after grant of registration, then they have to upload within 15 working days. Okay. Now, what will be the effective date of verification, registration? You apply today. Okay, officer will give after 2 months because 30 plus 30 has 60 days. So will the registration be on the 60th day or the first day? If you apply within 30 days from the date you became liable for registration, you have done your job correctly. You have applied on time, then you will get the registration with the effective date as the date on which you became liable for registration. I applied on 1st January. I was liable to register on the 1st of December and I've applied within 30 days. Say not 1st of December, 5th of December. I've applied on the 1st of January. I've applied within 30 days. 1st January, I applied. Registration I get on 1st of March. Still, my effective date of registration will be 1st of March. Or it will be not even 1st March. If I mention I'm liable for registration from the 5th December, you will get registration from 5th December. Because the earlier the date, better for you. You can claim the credit, whatever is after that effective date. But if you apply late, they have given you sufficient time of 30 days. You have applied after 30 days, then you will get the registration also late. Then the registration will be from the date of grant of registration. From where you are getting the registration. Say I applied instead of 5th of December, I crossed the limit. I did not apply by the 4th of January. I have applied on 10th of January. And the officer is taking 90 days. He's giving you on 31st March. Then your registration effective will be 31st March. See the implications. All your credit for this 3 months is gone. So you have to apply for the registration on time. Clear? So you understood the basics of the procedural aspects. Dhanush, clear? And any more doubts in the procedural aspect? Yes, Shankar.
सर इलेक्शन का जो प्रोसेस होता है ना, जैसे जीएसटी ऑफिसर अगर रिजेक्ट कर देती है हमारा रजिस्ट्रेशन कोई डॉक्यूमेंट्री वर्क के कारण, मतलब कि हमारा जो डॉक्यूमेंट जो है कोई वैलिड नहीं है, प्रॉपर्टी डॉक्यूमेंट जो है, तो सेंट्रल में और स्टेट जो में जो जाता है ऑफिसर्स के पास, वो क्या प्रोसेस होता है?
वो ऑटोमेटिक
हेलो।
जाता है। अगर आपने रजिस्ट्रेशन अप्लाई किया तो
एक
ऑटोमेटिक
होता है
वो
ना कि
कंसर्न
हमारा
ऑफिसर।
जो है सेंट्रल जीएसटी ऑफिसर्स के सेंट्रल में चला जाता है, तो उसको फिर प्री वेरिफिकेशन फिर से जो उसको करके हम लोग करते हैं ना, तो उसके लिए क्या प्रोसीजर होते हैं सर?
ऑनलाइन
हेलो।
में ऑफिसर आपको शो कॉज नोटिस देता है। ओके।
हेलो।
और वो फिजिकल।
आवाज, यू आर नॉट ऑडिबल सर। हेलो।
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 या तो बोलने
हेलो।
दीजिए। तो ऑफिसर जो है ही विल हिमसेल्फ कम फॉर वेरिफिकेशन एंड ही विल डू द वेरिफिकेशन, तो वो प्रोसीजर ऑटोमेटिक हो जाता है। Please explain physical verification before registration point. Yeah. So before registration, as we have seen that they will have to register, they will have to come for physical verification wherever required. So in such cases, when they come for physical verification, they will do the verification in a time bound manner because they get 30 days time limit if they have to do the physical verification. So that physical verification report, they have to upload 5 working days prior to the time of completion is what it says. Okay, so we have completed major portion of physical verification, registration and things. Small portion on amendment of registration, cancellation of registration, and revision or revival of that cancelled registration is there, which we will discuss on Thursday and conclude this chapter. So any doubts you have with respect to registration, we can take up in the next session and we can discuss on it. So have a reading of this chapter. So then you will have a better understanding. Okay. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. We will see you in the next session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for this session. I hope all
Yes.
the students have the good understanding of this, the major and the important aspects of the registration and the procedural aspects of all the registration process. And all the queries has been very well taken up by Deepak sir, and I'm really thankful for him. For the balance part of the registration, you can attend. You should attend the next class, and all the queries which are remain unanswered, you can ask in the next class, or you can also share your email, your queries on the email ID idt.bus@icai.in. So in case of any query or any doubt related to the queries or your study material or anything, you can directly mail to the ICI. And I hope you understand, you got the better understanding of the chapter, and we will regularly conduct these kind of the sessions and the classes in the future also. And I would suggest to attend all the classes sincerely and make most of this out of this opportunity. Also, I request every single student to practice as much as questions from their study material, your RTPs, and the mock test papers of past attempt papers and the of the forthcoming exams as well. Thank you so much, all the students, for attending the session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.